Okay, so I've picked three elements that most of us are familiar with. We've got gold, iron, and neon. What are some things about gold that make it unique? Well, it's shiny, it's a yellow color, it's a metal, it has a very high melting point. Iron is very reactive with oxygen and it forms rust. It is magnetic and also has a high melting point because it's a metal. All metals have high melting points. And neon is a gas at room temperature. It's very unreactive, and when you pass electric current through a tube full of neon gas, it glows with a bright reddish orange color. So elements. Elements are made up of one type of atom. They're a pure substance. And the definition of an element is something that cannot be broken down into simpler substances by chemical means. So take our gold nugget here. This means we can't pour any kind of chemical or react any kind of chemical with gold and make the atoms any more simple. The atoms are always going to have protons, neutrons, and electrons, no matter what we do. Even if we pour acid on this gold nugget, it might rearrange the atomic structure, but the protons, neutrons, and electrons are still going to be there. It will not become any more simple. There are actually over 100 elements, and they're organized in a really cool pattern on the periodic table. And we'll get into the organization of the periodic table at a later time. But this periodic table here is taken from periodictable.com, which is a really, really awesome website. And you can go to it and you can click on each individual element, and it will tell you about the properties. It'll tell you about different stories or histories of the elements, and even some of them have really cool videos associated with them. All right, and if you look on here, we have our special little friends that we were talking about. We've got gold right here. Here's neon. Oops, let's go back. Here is neon up here. We've got silver, carbon, oxygen. Here's our iron. Where is it? It's on the top row. Iron right up here. Okay, so all of these elements that we're familiar with, and then some that we may not be familiar with, like rubidium, or let's see, osmium, or even krypton. So what makes elements elements? Well, it's actually pretty cool. Here we have boron. It's number 5 on the periodic table. And boron has 5 protons in it. It also has 5 neutrons and 5 electrons. So the cool thing about boron is that it has 5 protons. Now, if you go over one element on the periodic table, you have carbon. Carbon is what makes up diamonds. And the difference between boron and carbon is that carbon actually has 6 protons. It has 6 protons. In this case, most carbon has 6 neutrons and 6 electrons. Okay, so the difference between boron and carbon is 1 proton. Now, if you go over 2 elements on the periodic table to oxygen, right, this is an image of oxygen at its liquid state. If you cooled it down, it would be this blue liquid. Right, oxygen obviously in the air that we breathe. Oxygen has 2 more protons than carbon. And it's because of its unique qualities of having 8 protons total that we are able to breathe it and use it in all kinds of functions in our body. Now if you take away one of those protons, you have nitrogen. And nitrogen is also a gas present in our atmosphere, but the difference between nitrogen and oxygen is the number of protons. Nitrogen has 7 protons, oxygen has 8 protons. So oxygen, we can breathe it, but if you take away 1 proton from each of those atoms, it becomes something that we can't breathe at all. So the number of protons in the nucleus becomes a really, really important number and an important concept, because that is what's going to differentiate between each element. Okay, remember back at the beginning when I talked about pure substance, what does that mean? I said that an element is the pure substance that consists one type of atom. And so let's look and see what I mean when we're talking about that. Here I have a bunch of dots, and each of these dots, let's say, represents one type of atom. If you look at them, all of the atoms are the same. They're all gold. Okay, so it's a pure substance in the sense that an element is made up of completely one type of atom, one gold atom, with 79 protons in it. Okay, if we had a different type of atom, we might have oxygen with 8 protons in it. Now this oxygen is a little bit different than the gold atom. You can see that there are 2 atoms sticking together. These are called diatomic molecules. Diatomic molecules just mean that 2 of them like to stick together. Right? But you can see that they're both blue, they're both oxygen. So they're still a pure substance of one type of atom, even though one type is attached to another one of the same type. And then here we have another one, silver, right? It's a lot like gold with one type of atom spread out here. So there we have it. That's all about the elements.